old gas mask with the canister removed, his voice muffled but clear enough. We were in a basement. That much was obvious from the space and the echoes. And, judging by everything, it was a huge one, and as you might guess, very far from the city. After all, everything that was illuminated here were his toys, the toys of a true hunter of people. Saws, angle grinders, drills, workbenches, chairs, wires connected to them, traps, hand saws, crowbars, and all sorts of other things. And I'm not even talking about the absurd amount of hand tools laid out like a fan on the nightstands. Just moments ago, literally 5 minutes ago, I was listening to my wife's screams. Now she's gone. He took her, and what was left, he deliberately and slowly packed into a black bag right in front of my eyes. And when he finished, he said, "Fish food, they'll eat it themselves." And I froze. My mind drifted so far away that the man in the gas mask and leather apron with those ridiculous pink flower-patterned gloves up to his elbows had to inject me with something to bring me back. And while I was still under the influence, I remembered how it all happened in the not-so-distant past. Why all of this happened to me. For the past couple of months, there had been whispers around the city about mysterious disappearances. The city is big, and no one would probably talk about it so loudly if it weren't for the strangely mutilated victim found in a parking lot near the shopping center. She had vague marks on her forehead, arms, and back. These marks looked terrifying, but they didn't mean anything, at least not to most people. And most likely, they were made up by the psycho himself. But it had the desired effect. They started hunting for him, the catchable psycho, and he seemed to mock them. Sometimes he'd throw in new victims who disappeared, not somewhere out there, but right in the city, in a city where cameras are everywhere. And the last one disappeared almost in the city center, on the square. Who is this mysterious someone who so easily guts people? That was a big question. But an even bigger question remained. How does he pull it off, even in broad daylight, and no one sees him? No cameras, no witnesses. They started blaming him for everything. If someone disappeared, it was him, and all that. And on social media, people started joking about it, warning each other and all that. Even at work, where my wife and I worked together, we'd occasionally talk about it with our colleagues, saying, "What a strange thing." Of course, the colleagues weren't shy about coming up with different theories. Some said it wasn't even a human, but a demon walking among us, pulling off such things. I mean, how can you snatch someone from the central square in broad daylight? That's a good question, and good luck finding an answer. I didn't pay much attention to all that nonsense. What's the big deal? I generally tried to steer clear of those conversations. Why talk about bad things when you can talk about good things, right? And again, what are the chances that I or someone else would become a victim of this psychopath? After all, we're made of different stuff, and it definitely won't touch us, right? And those who disappeared, well, they probably brought it on themselves. And no one dragged anyone from the square. She went with the psycho herself. After all, I've heard that the most terrible criminals either had super unremarkable appearances, like that guy from Rostov, or had some kind of charm, or were masters of words and could convince anyone to do anything. Surely this scumbag was one of them. That's what I thought. And in my soul, I just laughed and got angry at my colleagues' wild fantasies. After all, it wouldn't happen to me, not to us. My wife and I worked together, and again, where would they grab us? We leave the office, walk to the parking lot, and that's it. Home. And around the house, there are so many cameras that no maniac could ever hide. Same with the entrance and anywhere else. And there's security, even if it's just nominal. Oh, how wrong I was. How wrong I was, and it's not for nothing that they say never. We stayed late at work. Reports, papers, chit-chat, this and that, and it was already 8 o'clock. It gets dark early in autumn, and by 8, it's pitch black. We finished all the work with my wife, did everything we were supposed to and more, and decided that instead of going home, we'd go to a cafe. Sit down, relax, since we were both up for a bonus. We'd been working really hard for the past 6 months, and everything was going well. And then we walked out, talking about something. We were walking through a guarded and well-lit area, and it was just 3 steps to the car. My wife's scream. I turned around, and the last thing I saw was something like a crowbar flying at my head. And I didn't even have time to do anything. I didn't even really understand what was happening. A powerful blow, an explosion in my head, and the world shattered like a broken mirror. Then we came to our senses here, in this basement. And, luckily or unluckily, the one who brought us here wasn't around. We were lying tied to workbenches, waiting for our fate. I tried to break free. I tried to fight. But what's the use? My efforts led to nothing. The straps were very strong and very tight. I even think that if I had a knife or the ability to cut, it would still be hard, given their thickness. We lay there, trying to come up with something, and lay there for a long time. Definitely more than an hour, maybe 2. And then we heard the clang of a steel door, the bolt sliding into place. And then a long fuss and rustling in the anteroom. Our hunter was changing. Later, he entered the light in his work suit and without a word, without ceremony, began to butcher my wife like meat. He didn't say a thing, and I saw it all. And I broke down mentally. Watching this, listening, the conversations, it all affects your psyche very strongly, especially when he took out some of her organs and showed them to her. And she just writhed in agony. After all, the organs were alive, let's call it that. And this process lasted a very long time. It was clear that he wasn't just trying to kill her. He was deliberately carrying out his program from lesser to greater. Nails, fingers, hands, legs, and I ripped out with a spoon, but only one. Gutting, and as a finale, everything into the bag. Oh, you're so tender. They hit me so hard, I thought the back of my skull would crack. Come to your senses, tender one, the man said calmly without emotion. His voice was sterile, like a hospital sheet. Why? I asked. All right, let's go. I need to catch my breath. I'll smoke. You don't mind, do you? He asked politely and stepped out of the circle of light. I heard him drop the gloves Take off the gas mask. Light a cigarette. And sit down in a chair. Why? I repeated the question. It's necessary. You're a ritual sacrifice. The rules demand it. What rules? Man, let's make a deal. We won't make a deal. I don't make deals for money or connections or anything. You'll be killed here today, and I'll drag your corpse and hang it on a pole above the highway. I'm tired. I need to catch my breath. You think doing this is easy work, especially after work? Believe me, it's not. But why? Why do you do this? Do you understand that this isn't normal? Normal? A note of interest crept into his voice. And who decided what's normal and what's not? I'm just curious how you came to that conclusion. Well, there are laws, rules. Man, let me go. If you ask me to let you go one more time, I swear I'll get up and cut off your legs and really let you go under an oncoming truck. Believe me, in your case, it's better to be a ritual piglet. So, what about normality? Well, you can't treat people like this. Why not? There are laws, moral principles. I can bring a history textbook and beat you to death with it. History knows plenty of examples where, even under the most absurd or even the best motives, things were done that, as you can see, even made it into books. Should I give examples? You see, you know I'm right. That morality, rules, it's all just a game for hamsters. And all affairs are managed by those who wrote the rules. You see how simple it is. I have different rules. And whether you want to or not, you'll obey them. After all, in my rules, you lie on the table, snort, scream, and relieve yourself right on the spot. And then I drag you away. Those are the rules. I made them, and I wrote them. He drew a strange symbol in the darkness with the glowing tip of his cigarette. You're not a stupid person, that's clear. I'll ask you differently then. Why do you need this? Why do you need all this? After all, everything that was done, as you say, in history, had a purpose, some meaning. Everything was for something or someone. That is, you could say why. But what's your goal? What do you get from what you've already done? There is a goal. It's not simple. It, let's say, obliges me to do what I do. But what obliges you? A deal with the forces of hell. What? You heard correctly what I wanted to convey. In short, the story goes like this. Someone very close to me died absurdly. My daughter. She was friends with a girl, very close. From a very good and wealthy family, it happens. They were friends, studied, hung out, walked, and everything was as it should be. But either they quarreled or argued, and she threatened that my girl would deeply regret the betrayal and that she would definitely take revenge. My daughter told me about it. Well, what could I do? Well, as expected, I reassured her, but I fumed and forgot. After all, these are just words. And now, as you know, it's such a time that words are thrown around like grain in all directions. Well, for 2 days everything was fine, and then my daughter started saying that at night a scary woman was getting closer and closer to her. The first night she was by the closet, and today by the bed, and she felt that this woman would kill her. Well, I said that I'd deal with any woman so badly that even a bunch of surgeons wouldn't be able to put her back together. I turned it all into a joke and laughter and offered to stay with her until she fell asleep and guard her sleep. You know what it's like to lose someone close. Not so long ago, I butchered your wife. And now imagine, you're watching as fingers tighten around the neck of someone close to you, and she starts convulsing, her eyes bulging, her hands trembling, and you, like a fool, are screaming in a hurricane of rage and waving your hands in the air. A few minutes, and it's over. Just the imprints of a woman's hands on the neck, and that's it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? But you at least have a target. You have me. A bad and nasty maniac who does with people what he sees fit. And me? Who should I blame? What woman? Who is this woman? But, as you might have noticed, I had a thread. You can't pin this on the case my daughter told me about. Who should I judge? A ghost? What kind? Can't prove it. Nothing can be done. But I was determined and started digging into this family. I'm not a rich man, but you can't call me a beggar either. Some money here, something there. I even had to reach out to former workers and partners of that girl's father, who told me a lot of different things. You know, I paid everyone, paid generously. I wasn't in a hurry with revenge. I understood that I wouldn't even take 2 steps onto their property. I'd be taken out on the road or torn apart by dogs. I understood that I didn't just want revenge. I wanted to do something so that even after death, they would deeply regret what they had done. It didn't matter to me who was specifically to blame. I declared everyone my enemy. After all, they took my blood. That means I lived in vain, so they won't live either, and money won't help them. I, as you understand, talk to everyone. And here's what became clear after 6 months of my research. It was a strange family, very strange and wealthy. Everything rolled off them like water off a duck's back. And the head of the family ran people over. The mother burned down someone's apartment, and the daughter almost stabbed someone. They only moved because blood kept following them. But some of his former workers said they suspected that the devil himself was protecting them. Everything works out for them, and those who make too much noise mysteriously die. You know, heart attack, icicle from the roof, a late Kamaz, or maybe even slipped and flew under a train from the platform. Of course, the more I talked, the more I understood that without serious backing, I wouldn't be able to get my hands on their guts. For a long time, I went to witches, hereditary, and not so much. Paid money and didn't pay. I didn't do anything, and I lost hope with these damn charlatans. Until one day I got lucky, and I was introduced to a dark and powerful force. And that force said, act. But in return, you'll give 20 lives. 10 will be ritual, and then you'll go yourself. Well, and then it's simple. I got the power and took revenge as I wanted. That night, no one stopped me from dealing with them. I did everything I wanted. And then, emptiness. I felt empty inside. While the fire of revenge and rage consumed me, I felt alive, and then emptiness. I burned out. But a debt is a debt, and I'm paying it off. You'll be the 6th ritual sacrifice. I'll finish this and die myself. And why didn't you just accept it? Why do you ruin others? What are we guilty of? Nothing. I don't even know you, but the rules demand, let's say. But, you know, when you scream, I feel like I'm doing something, you know? Yes, exactly. There's darkness inside each of us. And how it manifests, no one knows. So I made a little room where I can calmly listen to your screams. And, this process is quite interesting. But don't think I'm insane or have lost my mind. I understand everything with my mind, but as I said above, these are my rules, and you just accept them. And again, you can beg and offer me anything. My choice is already made. I got what I wanted, and now I'm just paying off what I owe. That's the deal. But the signs, why do you draw them? Why do you do this? Signs. Actually, they don't mean anything to me. These are signs, or rather, symbols from the language of hell. They're from there, and each such painted sign has meaning for them. They remind the living that death is closer than it seems, and for everything, if not here, then there will be an answer, and they'll ask harshly. But for me, it means nothing. I just know which symbol to draw, and that's it. That's quite enough. Well, now, let's finish this. I'd like to get some sleep, and tomorrow I'll look for work. He put on the gas mask, and I twitched. Don't be afraid. It's unnecessary now. You'll suffer, for a long time. You've got complex signs, and drawing them, well, it's not easy at all. The whole palette of emotions is yours. But I can say this, scream, don't hold back. Keeping it inside is harmful. He stepped into the light with a solid knife, the kind that could pierce me through. Probably. Let's start with the easy part, namely the sternum. He began to slowly cut my skin, cut through, hit a rib, and I tried to jerk, but only made it worse. The wound under the knife widened. I felt the tip of the knife chip off a piece of bone. I heard that disgusting crunch of bone. I screamed, thrashed, begged, pleaded not to do this. And he deliberately, slowly widened the wound. A click, and the light went out. My tormentor cursed loudly and put the knife on the edge of the table, near my head. I could reach it with my fingers. Damn place. 3rd time this week. Sorry, I'll be back in half an hour. You're not in a hurry, are you? I'll be back, don't worry. Though you'll have to wait. Well, what can you do, such delays? He walked out, and I couldn't believe that freedom was so close. But I just had to figure out what to do in this situation. I tried to grab the knife with my fingers, but realized that even if I got it, I wouldn't be able to cut the bindings. But if I grabbed the handle with my teeth, I could cut the bindings on my hand, and then freedom. But I had to be careful. If I messed up, it was over. Awkward. I barely managed to pull the knife under my fingers. The blade was huge, long, enough to break ribs with it. Slowly, very slowly and carefully, I put one finger under the blade, the other on it, and lifted the knife into the air, reaching toward my left hand, which was fixed at head level. I understood that if I didn't hold the knife, which was very heavy, if I didn't grab the handle right, it was over. So I took my time. In the darkness, I found the wooden handle with my teeth, and with the help of my fingers and incredible effort, managed to grip the knife so I could cut. And I started. The length of the knife was barely enough, but the bindings were strong and didn't want to cut. And my position. I pressed on the knife as much as my neck allowed. The strap reluctantly parted, but I was afraid I'd never cut it. A minute passed. My neck was tired because I had to both press and hold the huge knife. My teeth dug into the handle, but I could already feel the strap loosening under my hand. A 3rd minute passed. I had no strength left. The idea seemed useless. I thought I heard something from the entrance. I think he's close. I need to cut faster because He'll be really angry if he turns on the light and sees the cut strap. 5 minutes passed, and I, not believing myself, cut the strap and, grabbing the blade, started to transfer it to my hand and cut the other one, then the legs. I didn't know what to do. Wild agony, ecstasy. But what to do? Hide, run for the exit. What if he's there? I thought for 3 seconds and decided I had to run, otherwise I was done for. And with the knife in my hand, I moved forward by feel. I knew where the entrance was, or rather, I imagined, and headed straight for it. And miraculously, I was lucky, and I bumped my forehead against the iron door. And then the light came on, and I almost screamed. I opened the door and stepped out into the night. Cold. Autumn. It was some kind of industrial zone. A huge area dimly lit by lamps on the left and right. This area was abandoned. Only a dim, deathly pale light fell from the neighboring sections, and I stood by some hill that had this door. I recognized where I was. But where to run? Where is this? He appeared from the direction of the abandoned building. He was faint, but visible, and I quickly figured out which way I needed to run, namely, the opposite. Under the cover of the hill, I ran to the fence, naked as the day I was born, with the knife in my hand, not paying attention to the glass or anything, even the bitter cold, which made my feet go numb. I just wanted to escape. Time passed. A week. I went through all the circles of hell. I experienced everything from conversations about how I didn't protect her to outright curses. My wife's relatives hated me for surviving. Or rather, they said I didn't protect her. But I could see in their faces and in my mother-in-law's face that she wanted to say it. She wanted to say that it would have been better if I died. Not her. But she didn't say it. But it was written between the lines. Of course, I got out. I made it home, called, reported everything, and they went there. And they found nothing. At the place where I was, 2 hours later, of course, there was nothing. The damned maniac, with the help of dark forces, still managed to slip away. And my personal hell was just beginning. I couldn't shake the thought, day or night, the thought that the maniac was right. It was strange to agree with someone who turned my wife into mincemeat, but still, he was right. I don't remember who, but he reminded me of someone in his way of thinking. There are people like that. They're different from the majority, though they're not strange or special. They just see the world more simply and aren't fools. He was absolutely right when he said that under the best of motives, you can justify anything. And the one who makes the rules controls everything. He even gave his own example. For some reason, I remembered with fear and trembling his manner of speaking. He spoke calmly, so calmly, as if answering from the grave. It was clear he wasn't stupid. Now he's probably set up a new place. And also, I realized why it was pointless to tell anyone about it. After all, there's no point in reporting where he is. After all, hell protects him. It shields its own. That's why you might as well try to catch smoke in a bag. No use. That explained his elusiveness and why he could do whatever he wanted and get away with it. Of course, at first I thought he was a psycho and all that, but now I understand his words. I understand his pain. He's a villain, but also just an unhappy man who told me his story. Yes, with quirks, but still, you can understand him. And now it's like vampirism, one bit, and now I'm doing it myself. I realized I was wearing the same shoes. I realized that these shoes were already in use, and they smelled of something familiar, namely blood. I told myself the same thoughts he did. I didn't want to leave it like this. I wanted revenge for the horror and pain I experienced. I didn't want him to just disappear. I wanted to tie him to a table and butcher him to nothing. I, like him, whispered to myself that without the help of any forces I definitely wouldn't manage. And I was amazed at what was happening to me. No, it wasn't madness. I was just thinking rationally. After all, I needed his blood, and to get it, I needed another force, a dark one. After all, his patrons wouldn't give him up until he fulfilled his deal. So I needed a force of a different kind so I could catch him, track him, and slowly turn him into mincemeat. No messing around. I've been searching for 3 days now, and I have a couple of leads. I have a friend from school, a strange guy, always hung around occult, mystical stuff. Believes in conspiracy theories, doesn't eat chocolate, and also keeps a tinfoil hat. I talked to him, and he promised to take me to a very creepy place today, where I'd have to go alone and ask alone. And he just said that if you get into this, it'll be bad. You'll be ground up. And you'll regret it, even after death, for asking these forces for help. But I didn't care. And I was waiting for tonight. Like air, we walked through the forest toward the creepy and dark. We turned off the highway and went down to a patch of mud, bottles, trash, and wrappers. And then we set off. Is it far to that place? Number, that's it. Stop. See the path? Yes. Go along it. At least tell me where I'm going. What is this anyway? Remember movies and cartoons where there are pillars with creepy faces carved into them? Yeah, something pagan. Well, one of those pillars is up ahead, but it's different. What does that mean? It's a pagan demon, even by their standards. This was the last resort, and even its name wasn't spoken aloud in the idol itself. Mutilated. Its face was cut off. It stands faceless, horned. Put your hands on it and say who you are and what you want. But, I hope you don't get an answer, because the price will be high. Are you sure there's someone in this idol? I thought it was something significant. You're the idol. It's an idol. It's a creepy place. And it's been standing there for hundreds of years, standing as if it was carved yesterday. Long ago, people were sacrificed here for the most terrible needs. Believe me, there's such power hidden there that you'll tremble. And I'm very glad that even among us, few know about it. Now go. This forest is making me nervous. I walked forward along the barely visible path, lighting the way with a flashlight. I didn't walk long, just about 10 minutes, and I saw a marvel. A tall idol, its face cut off and blood flowing down it. Near the idol was a hunchbacked something with deer antlers and a staff. Candles burned around it. It turned around, and I saw its face, a skull like a wolf's, predatory but with a terrible passion, and inside, eyes, yellow, glowing with a beastly fire. Fingers just bones, but you could feel immense power. Come closer, it said, beckoning me, and my legs carried me on their own. I stopped in front of this hunchbacked something. It whispered in my head,
I know what you've brought here, and I know what you'll ask, and I'll help you. My name is forgotten, my face erased by those who created me. I've been waiting for my arrival for a long time, but there's no name. Forgotten, no face, cut off. Not even a hanged man asked for my help. But you've come. Give me your hand.
I reached out, and claws ran along it and blood flowed down my palm.
I give you the power to possess, but only for a day. And then you'll bring me 100 human sacrifices speaking my name and in my name. Draw my likeness and send it to everyone so they know what I look like.
And your name? It whispered it so quietly, and my hair stood on end, and I realized it would have been better to die in that basement.
Go, you have a day. In a day, I'll appear to you, and we'll begin our harvest.
When it said this, the candles disappeared, as did it. It became dark. The idol with the cut-off face wasn't bleeding. I stood there, and nothing happened. But the cut on my hand was real. You gave me power, but what kind? I felt what kind of power. I saw the world completely differently than before. Understanding came, awareness of how it all works, the mechanisms of luck, fortune, misfortune, grief, and joy. I saw it all and understood, and I knew where my tormentor was feeding. After all, since I got into all this, I had to see it through to the end. I thought, feeling myself change inside and out. I was taking on the form of a beast. I found him. He reeked of death. He had taken refuge in an abandoned workshop. He had just finished with new victims. I stepped out of the shadows, looking at him. I was overcome with the desire to kill him right away. I could have done it, because now I looked like something out of a werewolf movie, only my height was the same, and my skull was skinless like that demon's. It seemed impossible, but when you're dealing with forces you don't understand, anything is possible. But my friend was no slouch either, but I saw that he was waiting for me and wasn't afraid at all. The one who walks the path of the beast becomes the beast himself. You're no different from me. You're my reflection. Now, you'll terrorize the city, he said, and I saw him grow larger, taller, bigger than me, red skin, short horns, muscles, and darkness in his eyes. Endless darkness, hell against the forgotten dark gods who existed before everything. I grabbed his face with my bony hand, drilling into him with my yellow eyes, but I got hit so hard that my lower jaw chipped a piece of asphalt. And then a hoof kicked me, and again and again. I tried to get up, but it was as if the darkness itself had chained me to the ground. The strength of the terrible head was inferior to hell's, and I started to panic as I was beaten, and I watched it all as if from the side.
I'll help you.
Something intervened in my consciousness, and I easily got up, grabbed the hellish creature by the neck with my teeth, and it screeched, and I bit its face, for which I got a kick in the side and flew into a brick wall, breaking through it.
We'll win without a doubt. We existed when there was no hell,
it whispered, and I felt my recently broken bones heal. Rage rose from the deepest depths of my hatred for this monster, and with it, my perception. Everything became jelly-like, slow, a hellish spawn, a couple of small-tailed creatures in the darkness, and something else, invisible, was present here. I grabbed the hooves and slammed my opponent into the ground with all my might. So hard that he almost died, turning back into a human. And then, like cats, I strangled two little devils who didn't quite understand what had happened. I approached the man. I saw the forces of hell abandoning him. I saw their betrayal, and the man was seriously injured. In this state, I could easily end his life without even touching him. But I wanted something else, and I wished to become human again, and the ancient forces allowed me to do so. I stood 3 steps away from him, thinking what to do now. He's barely alive, I can punish him in any way, absolutely. For a day, I'm practically immortal. I felt the support of that bony god. He would perform any miracle and help me, but only for a day. Now, it's your turn, the man with terrible wounds said, sitting on a piece of the wall. Yes, you didn't endure, and I won't either, so I'll kill you. I understand that. But I tried to do what I could, and I've broken quite a few bones, I think. But still, you shouldn't have gotten involved in all this. You'll see your punishment when the terms end. I see my punishment, but I'm ready to accept it. But are you ready? Yes, let it be so. Let it. I thought so too, but... What but? I stood next to him. We're just pawns. They'll always betray us, always. I picked up a brick and hit him on the knee, so hard that it crunched, and the man howled. How's that? Better? It won't change anything. If not you, they'll take me. Let it be you. Are you sure? Absolutely. Well, then get ready. Believe me, I won't let you go easily. Thanks to the ancient evil force, I kept him alive. I healed critical injuries, but didn't let him go. After 20 minutes, he was already begging me to let him go, but I knew no pity, and he just screamed and screamed. But as with me, no one responded to his desperate cries and pleas. An hour, 2, 3, and then the sunrise, and the demon in my head whispered that it was time to let go, and I let him go. I turned to the rising sun. It was still dark there. The dawn hadn't even begun, but it would soon rise. And the first thing I felt was a wild emptiness inside, all-consuming. And only then did I finally realize one simple truth. Someone has to wear the skin of the beast.